ways. I know how they feel. They're great. They're loyal. They want to bang for their buck.
Hold up. Hold up. Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
Now, all right. So welcome back to the show. Is it the third time now? I think it's three.
I think it's three, yeah.
Chris Higgins, former Vancouver Canucks player and also current assistant director of player development. We're really, thankful for you to join us on the show, and appreciate you spending your time here on Thursday, on a busy Thursday, because as I take it, the Canucks are so close, or inching closer to signing Pettersson and Hughes with all these reports breaking down. So first things first, though, Chris, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me, guys.
So let's start with the noise in the room here with the Petey and Hughes deals kind of breaking waves here. Rick Dollywell's reporting 7.7 million times 3 years for Pettersson, and I think it was Satyar Shah who reported 7.75 million over 6 years for Quinn Hughes. What can you tell us about, on the executive side of things, the negotiation process, how difficult they were, and what you kind of gathered or even learned from that, being in the room there?
Well, first of all, I'm just happy that things are getting really close, if not all the way done. From a player's perspective, missing training camp is huge. I'm glad those guys are hopefully getting into camp soon and getting a couple games under their belt. I know like I said, from a player's perspective, it's hard to just walk into a NHL regular season game after not going through camp and being expected to perform, and put you behind the eight ball a little bit. So hopefully they'll get some good skates in, a couple games in, and be able to contribute. As far as the numbers and anything like that, I think it's what Hank and Danny said. If you have a team that outperforms their contracts and across the board, you're going to be a good team. So hopefully these guys outperform their contracts.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation to see as a Canucks fan, for sure. I'm just curious, in your playing days, Chris, was there ever a situation where you had something like this, where there was one or two players that were, in contract negotiation? I'm curious if you could share what effect it may have had on the room, or what the perception is like for a player when you have a teammate going through this.
Well, I think, you always want guys to get what they think they're worth, but at the same time, guys are going through the hardest days of training camp, and you're not there. And we finished dead last in the division last year, and everyone wants to be a better team this year. So we want everyone there to build that culture again. Like I said, hopefully these guys get into town and we can start to build.
So you mentioned the Sedins. I want to ask you, what's it been like kind of reconnecting with them on in an executive fashion here, having them around again and being teammates, but this time off the ice? What can you tell us about that experience so far? And, and maybe what can you tell us about how they're growing into their roles?
Well, I think they're just still kind of taking it all in. I see them down in the rink every day as we were watching training camp together, and we're eating lunch and talking about the players. And it's different because it's usually we're talking, more about the opponent or specific plays, and now it's kind of, it's a different scope. You're thinking about the whole organization. You're thinking about guys that are in Abbotsford as well. So it's been interesting to have different conversations with them, as far as, in contrast to a player when we're talking, like I said, about a specific opponent, specific plays, how to beat that opponent that night. And now it's more of a bigger vision. So I've quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's so great to see them back in the organization again. It just fits and it makes sense. I'm just curious about a question in terms of deployment on the ice, given where Demko's at in his development, and Halak coming in as a goaltender who's not played a lot of West Coast hockey for a team. Do you have any sense of what the deployment's going to be like for those two guys in terms of game split? And then secondly, is there a situation where Dipietro is going to see some action, or is it going to take an injury with one of those two main guys, or do you think he might get a look this season?
Well, I think, knowing the goalie mindset, Dimmer wants to play as many games as he can. He's going to be the number one. And, he's right coming into his own right here, where he could really, make a name for himself in the league. And I think he has the attitude, the right mindset, and it seems like he's a very determined kid. So I'm really excited to see him take the reins this year and let him run with it. As far as the other goalies, I mean, that's not really my department. Ask Ian Clark, right? Like, I didn't really worry about the goalies too much. You knew when you had the backup in, and you had to play for him a little bit harder because he wasn't getting as many games and as many shots, and you wanted to show like that you cared when you got in the net. But we hope success for everybody, especially Mikey, who had a tough year last year, slugging it out all year. I want him to get a lot of games this year. He deserves it. Kid's got a great attitude, and obviously has quite a bit of talent as well.
Agreed.
So, Chris, I'm gonna continue with some of these questions here first, but I gotta ask you, where's that LarschCast hat? Where's that hat at?
I had it in storage.
Oh, there it is.
You have to dust any cobwebs off.
That's great to see. Great to see. It'll look better on your head, though. I'm just saying, but maybe around the ring too a few times. But
if we may not send the video, but it's a black hat day, gents. Although I got it backwards right now, apparently.
Yeah, you guys are kind of twins there. But okay, so I wanted to ask you about the grouse grind this year. I don't recall hearing any information about who came first or last, and I don't know if you guys did the rookies do the grouse grind again. What can you tell us about the results there? Best and worst.
We didn't do it this year. Usually it's something we do. During a normal year, we do it in July after the draft. We have all our prospects come in, but all European guys are playing. Our college guys couldn't come in.
Okay.
So we didn't do it this year. We had a little bit different look at camp, and worked on different themes over the course of 4 days, and tried to show them what it is to be a Canuck and how hard it is to play in the NHL, the level of dedication needed. No, I think they're probably really happy they didn't have to do it. Let's be honest.
Because the Sedins would have showed them up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Sedins probably do it in a better time than they did when they were playing. Now that they're running and training and doing all these trail runs and marathons, I bet you their time's even better. I'd be willing to bet that the fastest player wouldn't even come close to catching them. And right now, I think it would be 4 or 5 minute difference between them and probably the next fastest kid.
But how about yourself? You're Mr. Abs. Like, what's your time usually going to be?
I've done the grouse grind once, and I'm never going to do it again. I don't really get what that is about. It was awful.
The one photo that defines your career, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, I've done it once, and I really don't see myself ever doing it again.
Oh, that's great.
That's probably a good call. So I just got to ask, just because you mentioned the differences in training camp this year as opposed to last year. Obviously, Canucks fans know this is the first year that we've had a farm team in our own backyard. Is that part of why training camp's been so different, or is it a function of COVID, or is it just a new mindset, or what? Can you speak to why it's so different this year?
Oh, I just think I was talking more about the development camp was different. Training camp is more or less the same, where we don't have as many bodies as normal because, like I said, all European prospects are playing right now. They played already 5 or 6 games, most of them. So, it's only been 2 groups. Usually it's 3 in my experience. But having the team in Abbotsford across the board, everything is going to be better. They're going to get seen more. I think they're going to play harder because they know that management's been coming to town quite a bit more. Access to all the resources in Vancouver, medical staff, training staff. It's right down the street. So across the board, a win for us for sure.
Let's talk about some of the access to equipment and even the equipment being utilized now. And I'm speaking more towards the technology side of things here. What type of advances have you seen in terms of the technology being utilized here with the players? Coming from the prior management, Gillis's management style, where he, had sleep monitors and then, sleep doctors and everything like that. But what can you tell us about current technology being utilized with the players and for what purposes?
Well, I think right now they're probably still trying to figure out, a lot of teams are just collecting data right now and probably analyzing it and see, what shakes loose. As far as us, I mean, it's probably across the board the same thing. We'd have different metrics that we measure guys with, obviously heart rate and all these things. How fast you skate and the duration of your top speed. Those sort of things are kind of all calculated. Not really my department. And I'm a bit old school, so I kind of just wouldn't really worry about those sort of things. And if I was still playing, I don't really measure myself based off of those things. It's still hockey. You still got to use your brain and your heart, and those things matter quite a bit. So, but it's an interesting tool. And like I said, I'm sure, as we go along, the data is going to show certain things and probably help the game, help elevate the game, elevate our players, certainly.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the blend of technology, and I agree. I'm a bit more of an old school guy like you as well too. I'm a does he pass the eye test kind of guy. I'm just curious though, on the defensive side, I'm not going to ask directly about Travis Hamonic because I know it's a bit of a no comment situation right now with the where things are at. But I'm just curious if Hamonic decides not to report to camp. Is there a plan in place for what to do with that extra cap space? Are you guys going to try and weaponize that and sign a defenseman, or is there a contingency plan if he decides not to play?
That's above my pay grade, to be honest with you. Obviously Hammer was really strong for us last year, and especially being a right shot defenseman. Like, they don't grow on trees, right? And he was a great guy in the locker room, really well liked. I don't really want to comment on his personal stance on things, but are we going to miss the guy? Certainly. I thought he was a really strong player for us last year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple series of developmental questions here, just based on training camp and some of the younger prospects, which that is in your pay grade there. Who do you think needs to take a big step this year? And out of the young players, who do you feel is going to be that breakout young player this year? And that could mean AHL or NHL, but in terms of the younger prospects in development here.
Well, like I said, we finished last in the division, so I'm certainly hoping all of them take a big step. Let's be honest. No, I mean, like across the board, we're, a lot of our good players are still young. I mean, even the guys that you're talking about earlier, Hughes and Pedersen, like they need to take big steps. Bo needs to take another step. Höglander needs to take another step. We're hoping Podkolzin grows throughout the year. I mean, Jack Rathbone, you can go down the line. Thatcher Demko, we're hoping takes another step. I mean, I just rattled off 6-7 names. Everyone takes a half step or a full step, we're going to be a much better team. So I think the way things went last year, guys, you can't live through that again, especially in the Canadian market. The fans demand better, the city demands better, the players that played before these players now demand better. So it's hard to say, one guy. We're, collectively, it just flat out wasn't good enough last year, and everyone needs to take a step.
Well, what about on the like on the AHL level, or maybe the non-NHL level? So, like for example, Klimovic, this player came in guns blazing at camp. So, like, who amongst that group of players that you don't see making the NHL lineup or are unlikely to make the lineup in the NHL there, amongst those players, who impressed you the most, and who are you most excited about watching develop here this year?
Well, I think, obviously, Will Lockwood got a lot of press early on in camp, and certainly, he looks like he's, knocking on the door. But, we hope that Abbotsford team's very competitive this year. I think we're going to be pretty top heavy down there, and there's going to be a lot of guys that going to think that they're the guy to be called up, and that's great. I love that internal competition. I like, your teammates down there, but at the same time, like you want to be the name called when the guy gets injured or someone's not performing at the big level. So we hope that there's 5 or 6 guys that are in the discussion every time that there's a call up. That would be ideal for us.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I'm so stoked to have the team in our backyard too. It's really exciting. But I'm gonna take it to a specific player. I want to ask you about Bo Horvat. I think you can hear in his voice the excitement level he has for this season to start for various reasons. One, I think the whole team has something to prove. But two, I think this is the first time most fans would say that he's ever played with bona fide offensive talent line mates on either wing. What do you think the high end for him on this team is? I kind of see him in that kind of third to fifth scoring on the team range. Is that unrealistic, or what's your sense of where he can grow this year?
Well, I mean, for Bo, like the guy's a player, right? Like, so if he gets on a good ride, like who knows, right? Like that confidence is a big thing. He's going to be the heartbeat of the team. So, certainly we brought in some talent for him to play with. Like Connor Garland looks good. Even like I said, guys take another step. Höglander, Podkolzin might show well early in the year. There's plenty of guys, like you said, for him to play with. I know how things went last year with the team. That's a guy that takes those things personally, and he's going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So, I think I'm pretty excited to see what Bo does this year as well.
Yeah, me too.
We've seen through a preseason game here, JT Miller at center. We talked about the potential for Hamonic not to be there this year. It remains to be seen. We don't know yet, but that might come down the wire tomorrow. But I want to ask you, how would you approach the cost versus benefit of having JT Miller playing center, as maybe a second or third line center to help protect the young defense?
Well, first of all, I think we're fortunate enough that he can play both, right? Like those players are so valuable. I couldn't play center at the NHL level, and those guys that can play both and do well on faceoffs too. It's a great value for us that's even an option. As far as JT Miller as a player, like we want him on the ice as much as we can. The guy can flat out play, like he does everything, right? So certainly wherever he plays, ice time's not going to be an issue for him if he plays up to his standards. And the guy, I wish I looked like him when I played. Like like he does everything so well. It's a guy that I point to our younger guys, how to play. Use your body, play against the boards. His competitive streak. There's a lot of things that I could point to. With the prospects that he does really well, and certainly a great player to have on our team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious though, just because of the way the season went for him last year. I think some of the fans in Vancouver were concerned that he was maybe trying to do too much on the ice. I think the same could be said for a lot of Canucks, given how the season went and where things went. But is JT Miller focusing on getting back to that more just simplified game, doing the things he does really, really well, banging, crashing, skating fast, because that's the JT Miller we saw in year one. Do you get a sense that he's headed back in that direction?
Well, he's one of the best players on the team, right? And I've been there before. Like I've been one of the best players on teams before, and growing up and through college and all that. And when things didn't go well, I fell in the trap of trying to do too much by myself too. I mean, that's just natural for players. Like they believe in themselves. So I'm not I'm not surprised that he made some mistakes trying to do too much last year. Like that's completely normal to me almost, because like I said, we didn't perform. So he was trying to take things on his own shoulders and try to make something happen. And I don't necessarily fault him for some of the nights that he tried to do that.
Well said.
So I got a couple questions here just from the group chat. And for everybody listening, we know what the group chat is for Chris Higgins. I don't know if you know, but there's this infamous group chat apparently. So, but anyways, that's neither here nor there.
I won't ask any questions. Yeah,
it's apparently the only group chat that exists in Canucks Nation. So the one and only. But anyways, from the group chat, Lucas Jasic, I think it's Jasic actually, is currently leading the Finnish Liga. Is it the La Liga, I believe? Yeah, in scoring 10 points in 7 games. So could we see him potentially in Abbotsford this year?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't been privy to any discussions about it yet, but I hope he does well. Like I said, I think we're gonna have a really strong team in Abbotsford as well. So we'll see how we start off down there.
Mm-hmm. And the other question we have here is, I know Ryan mentioned Mikey Dipietro already, but I just want to, in reference to the other goaltenders that we have on the team here in the depth here, what do you think the goaltending tandem will be in Abbotsford? And the Canucks obviously traded for Spencer Martin, who was signed earlier in the spring by Tampa Bay, but Silovs and Dipietro both looked good in preseason. So what do you expect to see?
That's great. I mean, I think Artie and Mike have really shown well in camp. So that's a good problem to have. And I'm sure, the cream always rises to the top. So there'll be, like I said, there'll be internal competition between the three of them, and, the best player will play. So that's a great problem to have.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I'm just curious about the power play deployment here. Obviously, it's a difficult question to answer without Petey and Hughes being in the lineup because they're such huge parts of that PP1 unit. But it looks in the season so far like you guys have taken a very measured approach in making sure the PP1 and PP2 unit both have some offensive weapons. Is that going to be the mentality starting the season once Petey and Hughes are signed, or do you think there's high potential they're going to kind of load up that first line and get Larson and Ekman-Larsson and potentially Hughes and have a really dynamic first power play?
Again, good problem to have. Now we have options. Last year, our options were limited. Now we have more options. Yeah. So different looks, different skill sets, different strengths, different ideas. Great problems.
Well, because I mean, who's going to be the second line center for that? Or it's Bo Horvat? That's a pretty damn good second power play unit center. So you're absolutely right. It's a great problem. Yeah. I think the power play is going to be phenomenal.
So we had all this little kind of fun banter of above your pay grade or below or within. But I want to ask you, Chris, and a lot of our fans and listeners want to ask you, what is the typical day for Chris Higgins in the organization? So can you walk us through maybe a typical game day or even just a regular day, non-game day? So walk us through what your routine is.
Sure. I mean, my days are a little different now with training camp going on. So I usually been going on early with our new skills coach and Yogi and one of our assistants down in Abbotsford, Jeff Ulmer, and I have been doing some goalie skates with Ian Clark and the goalies in the morning, which is awesome because they're trying to get dialed in for the season and they're trying their hardest. So you get to shoot against NHL goalies who are trying their hardest, right? That's the bare minimum. It's pretty fun way to start your day, right? And then I'll probably hop up to the stands and watch the skates. Then we'll have some discussions as a coaching staff throughout the day. Game days, same thing. We'll have a little skate in the morning. Then if we're flying out to Calgary tomorrow. We'll fly out during the flight, and before the game, usually I'll watch some of our prospects in Europe that have started. I'll watch it. The other day I watched probably 6 games before the game. It's just a lot of watching hockey right now, to be honest.
That's a lot of hockey.
It's just a lot of hockey, yeah. And then during the year, it kind of slows down a little bit. I'll usually try to drive my daughter to school every day if I can, and then watch hockey until she gets out of school and be able to play with her and take her activities during the day. I'll be traveling to see these kids in person, which I think is very important. And hopefully getting over to Europe again this year to catch those guys in person as well. So, it's honestly, it's a dream job. I love it. Every day is great to still be part of this organization. Everyone knows that I'm really proud to still be part of this organization. So, I fully enjoy my role with the team.
Love to hear it.
Yeah, well, we're sure glad to have you here too. I'm just curious. I want to ask about the Oliver Ekman-Larsson kind of return to form conversation. He had 3 assists in the game against Calgary, and from just a viewer perspective, it looks like he's got an extra step playing with the Canucks, and he's kind of found his form. What's your sense of where his development's at and returning to that? And is there anything that you've seen in training camp that would point to something that fans could be optimistic about this guy kind of being kind of what we expect or what we need him to be for this team to be successful?
I thought he's looked excellent in camp so far. I think he's probably has a lot of eyes on him to see his performance this camp, and I was really encouraged by what I saw in the preseason game, the game that you mentioned there, because I thought he played really physical. He had a lot of bite, and he showed like a really good competitive drive. Certainly in physical battles, one-on-ones, and puck battles like that. I was very encouraged by what I saw there. So if he brings that kind of effort with the skill level he has and the hockey sense that he has, it's good things are going to happen for him, because like I said, those are elite things that he has. If he brings that energy, brings that competitive spirit, the game will make sense to him.
So we got a couple final questions for you. One is just about Podkolzin. How big is he really? Like, we've heard stories. He's got like huge freaking hands, and we saw pictures of him next to JT Miller, and he's kind of like towering over him. Broad shoulders and everything. And so, how big is this kid actually?
He's bigger than I thought he was, and like you said, when you said his name, like his hands are absurdly big. Like, it was like borderline emasculating shaking his hand. Like, I thought I had a pretty good handshake, and he put me to shame, man. Like, he's gonna grow some more. You could tell, like, he's not there yet. He's gonna become a man, and if he there's some issues with his skating that are going to need to be ironed out, like with most kids.
Can you elaborate on that? I mean, we'd love to hear your actual thoughts on that.
Well, you'll see. I think the European game that he's used to is not as much stop and starting, not as much small area. It's a little bit, like I say, just a little bit more swoopy, and the NHL is more straight lines. Acceleration is a little bit more needed, I guess. So he'll get it. He's smart enough. You can see in some of the small area games we played during the development camp how far he is ahead of all the other players there. The intelligence, the ability to pass and find space. He'll be fine. It's just he'll have a steep learning curve, and hopefully he plays with good players that could put him over the edge.
So I got to ask just a quick follow-up on the mitt size, because having shaken Zdeno hand once in the mosh pit at the Roxy, it's a true story. I shook his hand and it was like a baseball glove. Like, I'm assuming you've shaken Chara's hand. Like, can you compare the two? Just for me personally, because I've shaken Chara's hand, and that thing is unreal.
I mean, I just hope you get to shake this kid's hand one day, like, because it's ridiculous.
Is it like a heavy, like a bear paw? Like, what do you mean? Like, it's long, lanky? Like,
it's emasculating. That's what it is. Yeah,
that's
exactly
exactly
the word I'm gonna use. Yeah.
When I shook Chara's hand, it felt like I was a little child reaching up and he was going to walk me across the street.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll end it with this final. Unless, Ryan, do you have any other questions that you wanted to ask? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
About the dynamics of the Gadjovich situation. I know he's one of the players that's likely going to end up playing for Utica, but being on a one
or Abbotsford.
Sorry, I totally pulled the TJ Utica card. You did that.
I did it in the chat room, not live with Chris Higgins here. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. So with the Abbotsford Canucks, there's a potential of him being sent down. Is there a sense of how they want to play that, or do you think, given how this guy blazed up the AHL last year, is he going to be claimed on waivers? Is that a concern for the team?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think for everyone that has to clear waivers, I think
hold your breath.
He's made some big strides in his game, like incredible strides, because certainly in the skating area, and just the pro details of his game, like he's become a monster in front of the net, and obviously had great success last year. So he's got a great attitude. He's a great kid. I really like, those kind of kids you hope have success, because I know he's put the work in and he's got a great attitude. So, he's a guy that's easy to try to pull for.
Awesome.
So before I ask you like this final fun question, I wanted to ask you one more thing about Klimovic here, just because I'm very curious, and I think a lot of fans are curious. How close to the NHL is he? Just how close, and what does he have to work on?
Well, I think he's just got to understand the NHL game a little bit, positioning, where he's going to find himself in trouble with the puck. Like I said, there's more space where he played on the bigger ice, and sometimes, near the blue lines defensively and offensively, you think you have a little bit more time, you get closed off, and then you're feeding the other team's transition. So he'll have to identify those areas of the game where he probably will need to do less. But, the raw skill, the size, the power, the shot, there's those things are obviously, part of his arsenal. So I think once he understands the game, once he understands how to play his position, master his position, he's gonna be a player. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we're really, really excited to see what he can do and what he can bring to the organization. So final thing I want to ask you, do you have any plans at all to watch that Maple Leafs documentary on Amazon Prime?
I'm sure I'll probably end up catching a little bit of it, but as a player, I hated those things, like having cameras around in the room. Like, this is supposed to be our last safe space, to be ourselves. And then you're sticking a camera in my face, like, get out of here, man. Like, I hated that stuff. Yeah. Because then you got guys that act different around cameras, and you're always worried about what you're going to say. And, I feel like the locker room was kind of one of our last places to kind of be ourselves and be a little stupid and dumb and childish. And, I don't know, that's kind of been taken away from us a little bit. So I'm a little, it is what it is. And, maybe we shouldn't act so childish in the locker room, but it's fun.
I don't think that's the solution.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for jumping on with us again. And thank you to CMAC for making it happen. Chris, we always appreciate your time. It's very valuable, I know. And you have great insights, and we love hearing from you. And so do all our listeners. And so, again, just a huge thank you. Anything, final thoughts you want to have for the listeners about the Canucks, something to get excited about, something to look forward to? What are your final thoughts on this season coming up? Because it's right around the corner. So I'm just glad that we're gonna be playing in front of fans again. Last year was awful, especially with how things were going. Like, it was pretty quiet in Rogers, and I'm looking forward to the fans. I think there's going to be some players that are going to feed off of that energy this year that didn't have it last year. Certainly made for a much longer year, and the people of Vancouver want to see wins, and hopefully we're going to give it to them. Absolutely.
We're sure excited to get out there and cheer you on. LarschCast's back in the house.
There you go. Absolutely. Go Canucks, go. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. Thank you, Chris Higgins. Thank you, Ryan. Enjoy. The upcoming season is right around the corner. Go Canucks, go.